Guys, market research and analysis. This is going to be the most important video probably. This is the difference between if you get a good property or a bad property. So here's what we're going to cover. An introduction to market analysis in general and AirDNA. We're going to be using AirDNA. Big picture data, so the key metrics that matter on a macro level. Understanding and filtering good versus bad data. A lot of the data that you see on AirDNA is just noise. So I'm going to show you how to filter that out so you can pay attention to the data that actually matters. Manually scraping data from comparable properties. So I'm going to show you how to actually go into Airbnb, go into AirDNA, and scrape the data from other properties so we can compare it to ours. After we've completed all those steps, we are going to logically predict our property's potential compared to the others in the area. So, warning, this is the most important video in the entire course. For real this time, not kidding. Watch the entire video, don't skip, don't fast forward. And here we go, Introduction to Market Analysis and AirDNA. Alright, so we're going to dive into how to figure out if an Airbnb property will be profitable, and we'll be using AirDNA data to do this. Now, I know some people say that AirDNA isn't a good source, but that just means they haven't watched this video yet to learn how to interpret the data. Honestly, this is something I see people mess up all the time, and it drives me crazy. I've seen so many people just plug an address into something like Rentalizer or a rental calculator, see big revenue and think, this property is going to make me so much money. And then they get the property, and guess what? It doesn't make anywhere near what they thought it would. They end up losing money or, breaking even. And then they go on saying Airbnb arbitrage is bad, doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing, guys. So I've made that mistake before. Early on, I relied on tools like Rentalizer to predict revenue without really understanding the data behind it, like what it's actually doing. And yeah, it burned me. I lost money, But after making those mistakes, I figured out a process I'll share with you a bit further in this video on how to avoid bad deals and accurately figure out how much a property can actually make. Total disclaimer before I even continue. Although there is a good amount of differences, a lot of the way I do data analysis is very similar to a gentleman named John Bianchi. He has a ton of free content online. A lot of high-level businesses on the Airbnb space do the same kind of manual scraping too, but John is the original, probably, and the best. So I'm going to add his free content below this video as well, so you can check it out. Since the more perspective you can gain in the whole market analysis bubble, the better. Anyways, moving on. Tools like Rentalizer and revenue calculators, they're not totally useless. They're fine for getting a general idea, of the market or property, but they're not reliable enough to make a large financial decision like jumping into an arbitrage unit, And that's where most people go wrong. They use these tools as their only source of truth and don't do any deeper analysis and just take them as true, and they jump and they spend a lot of money and they end up getting burned. That is where AirDNA comes in. AirDNA is the most powerful tool out there for short-term rental data, but, caveat, but, with that, it also comes with a lot of noise and a lot of bad data that we have to filter out first. If you don't know how to use it properly, it is equally as bad as Rentalizer or a random revenue calculator, so you have to use it correctly. A big part of what I'm going to show you today is how to filter out the bad data, focus on what's actually useful, and use that to predict revenue with a degree of confidence. You don't need to be some kind of data expert to do this. I don't have any background in analytics or data scientist. I worked at a nuclear plant. I'm definitely nothing of that sort. All I've done is learn how to look at the data in front of me. Airbnb is very transparent about its data. So we're not guessing, we're estimating, right? So I've looked at the data in front of me, I've made sense of it, and I've applied some simple logic to get some reliable results. Think of it like this, guys. You know how McDonald's spends millions and millions of dollars figuring out the best corner to open a location? And then Burger King just opens up across the street. They don't reinvent the wheel, they're just copying what's working. That's exactly what we're doing here. The Burger King logic. So we're not going to complicate this, guys. We're going to look at what's already working for other Airbnbs and logically deduce why and use it to make smarter decisions for our potential property. So in the process I use that I'm going to be teaching you in this video, we're going to talk about understanding good data versus bad data, analyzing your property in detail, figuring out how to extract the most useful insights from AirDNA, finding comparable properties, evaluating their performance, and then using that to predict your property's revenue. By the end of this, you should have a clear step-by-step process you can rely on to avoid bad deals and focus on profitable ones. It's really just about keeping things simple, logical, and grounded in real data. So here we go. Before we even dive into the understanding good data versus bad data, like filtering and the real research and analysis behind this, I want to start with the big picture metrics that matter the most: market score, market growth, and RevPAR. These are essential for understanding a market's overall potential and whether it's worth investing your money and time to even begin with. So this is where you start when looking for potential properties to reach out to in the first place. If they look promising here, then you start the outreach process in the finding your first property video. And then after you have interested landlords, you can proceed into the deep analytics to see if the property is profitable and ultimately what you need to negotiate on to make it a really good deal for you. Does that make sense? Like, you start here, you screen the locations, you launch an outreach in promising markets and submarkets. Then, when you get the bites, you dive in deeper. Because it's tedious, right? It takes a good little chunk of time to really come to a conclusion. So you only want to really spend time like really researching on the properties that you're very interested in potentially taking over. Anyways, market score is a quick way to gauge how attractive a market is for short-term rentals. A higher score typically means stronger demand and profitability. However, it's important to look beyond the overall market score and consider submarkets or neighborhoods. Performance can vary widely within a single market, especially in very, very large metro areas with a bunch of different pockets, right? Austin, Houston, New York, like anything, right? It's pretty agreed on that focusing in these pockets is where the most opportunity is. It often reveals the best investment spots. Market growth tells you how the number of Airbnb listings changed over time over the last couple of years. While growth can signal a thriving market, it also means increased competition. Pay attention to the types of properties driving this growth. This is the important part. Smaller units like 1 and 2 bedroom apartments often have more competition, while larger homes or unique properties might have less saturation, offering more potential, right? This isn't always true, it's just something to consider. Finally, RevPAR, or revenue per available room, is a crucial performance metric. It combines occupancy rates with average daily rates to show how much revenue a property generates. This is a hotel metric that's been used for like literally ever. So I think this makes the most sense to track. Rising RevPAR indicates a strong market or property is performing efficiently, while a decline might signal increased competition or weakening demand. So these three metrics, market score, market growth, and RevPAR, help you understand the broader dynamics of a market and lay the foundation for making smart investment decisions. Here we are on AirDNA. I just clicked Charlotte. It just popped up. I have no idea. I don't have units in Charlotte. But when I clicked it, it had a 90 market score, so I thought it was a good example for this video. So, market score, the first thing we're going to talk about is right here when you click on the market overview. And then when you click on the submarkets, they will have their individual market scores. So this is what I mean when I'm talking about very large cities, maybe not Charlotte in particular. This score could maybe be 65, and then you come into the submarkets, certain niche areas close to downtown, and they're actually 85s. So even though the overall market isn't perfect, when you dial into a submarket, it can still be a very profitable area. In my opinion, the real arbitrage in Airbnb arbitrage isn't about arbitraging the rental price and putting it on Airbnb. It's about finding the right arbitrage angle to actually get in these markets and make a big profit. So I'll show you a bit later in this video, but what I mean is, for example, say 1 bedrooms are maybe too saturated, and then you go into the submarket and then you confirm it, you're like, okay, there's 38% 1 bedrooms, but in this particular market, there's only 3% 5 bedrooms, wow, or 4 bedrooms. This could maybe be, everyone could think this is a terrible market, but then you have found this little hidden gem and this little arbitrage to make a killing there. So every market has a play. Don't be fooled. It's just up to you to find it. Moving on. Next is rental growth and the active listings. So right now I have in the performance, I have everything from 1 bedrooms to 5 bedrooms plus or 6 bedrooms plus. So this is showing the data of the overall market: 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. You can see it right here. And this is the rental growth of all listings on Airbnb. So as you can see, February 2022, it was at 3.2 and it's slowly going up, slowly going up. And as you can see, it's actually falling off now. Now, this doesn't mean anything really. It's just something to consider. Over here is RevPAR, and these kind of work in unison because, for the most part, when a place goes through extreme rental growth, usually the RevPAR starts to go down. And all that means is that the supply is just starting to come in line with demand. And then because of that, the price per night across all the listings is starting to go down a tiny bit. So it's just basic economics. Again, this doesn't really matter as much because the way that we're going to find properties is dependent on how many bedrooms, stuff like that, which is going to drastically change this because if rental growth, I'll actually show you. Let's see what happens. So let me go into the listings here and let me just change it to 5 bedrooms. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I'll show you in real time. Wow, there's a good example. So it went from 4,000 something to 211. That's crazy. That's how many 5 bedroom plus houses are in Charlotte right now. Also, to top it off, the rental growth is up 7%. So rental growth is up. There's a very low supply. And look, even RevPAR is going up. So it hasn't even so supply and demand aren't even equal right now. It's still going up, up, up. So the demand is there, supply is not there, everything's going up. So this is actually a really good market to start exploring. There's a lot of data here, like revenue, rates. I don't even really worry about this stuff. The only other thing maybe worth looking at would be maybe booking lead time and maybe peak occupancy rates, just so you know your peak season. Other than that, the big three is the most important part. So look at market growth, look at the market score, overall market and submarket. Take it a step further and see how it varies when you switch or when you filter out to certain bedrooms or a certain amount of bedrooms, sorry. And this should give you a pretty clear screening, like a clear understanding on where to actually start reaching out. Because you know the growth is going up, you know that the RevPAR is still going up, and you know the market score is good. This is what we look for before we start trying to find the property. And then after we find the properties and we have some interest, we dive deeper in. Now I'm going to show you what that looks like. Before we start analyzing the data, we need to understand what good data versus bad data actually is. Honestly, this is one of the biggest things people get wrong when analyzing Airbnb or any other data source, really. And this is where all the mistakes actually happen. About 80 to 90% of the data that you come across is what I just call junk data. It's just pointless and provides literally nothing. If you don't know how to filter it out, you're going to make decisions based on numbers that don't actually reflect reality. They're not real. They're extrapolations based on AirDNA's algorithm. And trust me, guys, that is a one-way ticket to getting stuck with an unprofitable property. You want listings that have been tracked for at least 250 days. Why? Because if a property hasn't been tracked for close to a year, the numbers are false and misleading. For example, let's say a property is only active on Airbnb for 30 days during peak season when prices are sky high. For whatever reason, the owner rents his vacation home for peak season and lives in it in the off season, blah, blah, whatever the case. Now, AirDNA's algorithm will take those 30 days of bookings at X price, sky high, peak prices, and extrapolate it across the entire year to generate its predicted revenue potential. It actually shows you on the website. It's going to be so wildly off that it's literally not funny. So we need it to be online for a minimum of 250 days to even consider it as a potential comparable. The second thing is to make sure the property has at least 20 reviews overall and that there's 1 or 2 reviews every month for the past 12 months. This shows it's being actively managed as a full-time listing. Part-time or the seasonal host, like I was just saying, they won't give you the reliable data because their numbers don't reflect a property operating at full capacity. So this is the name of the game. This is what we're actually trying to figure out here. You can just manually check this, by the way, on Airbnb. It takes 2 seconds. I'll show you right now. So here's the exact listing in the video. You can just scroll down and just see if there's a few a month. So it was tracked for over 250 days. It was operated by a full-time host. There was at least 20 reviews and a couple each month. If you did have a property that was, in that ballpark with that one, amenities, stuff like that, that would be a pretty good comparable. It'd be valid to compare against. One more thing I do want to bring up is just be cautious with properties that are only listed on Vrbo. You can see it right there. There shows like an Airbnb sign and a Vrbo sign. I don't know why, but the Vrbo only data tends to overestimate revenue. It might look like the property is making way more than it actually is. I just skip over the Vrbo only listings completely. I just can't use those conflict confidence. So I just suggest you do the same. Now to actually filter this stuff out is quite easy. I'm going to show you right now. It takes 20 seconds. Go to listing, performance, Professionally managed, yes. Host unit count, do 6 to 20 just because those are the hosts that we're going to compare ourselves to. Days available, 180 plus. We'll just disregard the ones under 250. Review count, and that's all there is to it. And then you click apply, and it's going to filter out everything that we just spoke about. And then we're left with this. Now, the name of the game here is to use true logic and try and deduce where your property actually falls in line with these. This stage is what I like to call the manual scraping part. It's a hands-on, detail-oriented part of the process where you gather all the data and information you need to actually make accurate predictions. I do want to set expectations here. This part is brutally tedious. It's where most people feel overwhelmed or even give up. But trust me, if you just stick with it and follow these steps, it will pay off. As an Airbnb entrepreneur, this is the stuff that matters. This is where you should be focusing a good portion of your time, right? Underwriting deals, finding the right deals, understanding market analysis. This is how you win. So first, step one is reviewing every detail of the property that you're actually looking at, considering leasing. So this is a deep dive into understanding the potential of the space and its features. So the idea is to analyze the property thoroughly to ensure you don't overlook anything that could affect its performance in the market. For example, start by evaluating the common spaces. Look at the living rooms. How many are there? Sometimes there's two. What size are they? Are they big? What can you fit in there? Consider how functional they are for guests. Then move on to the dining area. How many people can it seat? Does it have the capacity to even accommodate larger groups? Examine the kitchen. What's the overall quality like? Is it modern or does it have a dated appearance? What about bonus features like a backyard, rooftop patio, building amenities? Think about how these elements actually add value from the guest perspective. Also, location is key, right? Evaluate the property's proximity to attractions and its overall convenience for guests. Is it right beside a big attraction? Is the reason people come to this city for this big attraction and your house is very far away? Things to consider, right? That's what I mean when I say we just need to use logic with what's in front of us. The goal at this stage is to identify all the details that set the property apart, or honestly, the areas where it might fall short, realistically, so you have a complete understanding before moving on to the next steps. I also have a checklist at the bottom of the page here as a resource for things to consider for your property. So after you've reviewed every detail of your property, you're feeling good. The second part is to just filter out the irrelevant data. And when I say irrelevant, I mean if you're looking for a 2-bed, 2-bath, that's the property that you're doing this research for. It makes no sense to compare it to a 5-bedroom, 6-bedroom house, right? And then vice versa. If you're doing this research for a 5-bedroom, 6-bedroom that you're potentially going to lease, then it doesn't make any sense to use comparables that are 2 beds, 2 baths, right? So I'll show you how this looks. We're just going to go in listings like I already showed you. Professionally managed, 6 and above. Minimum 250 days, minimum 20 reviews. Click apply. Now, as you can see, the STR listings have already dropped substantially just from that. And now we're going to weed down even further on the listing side. And we're going to sort based off your property. So, for example, for this video, we'll do, say, 2 beds, 2 baths, apartments only, and let's see what we can get. So there's 18 listings. We might have to make that a little bit bigger. Let's do, there. All right, we got 91 listings. So now that we have 91 listings and we're sorted by revenue, and this is specifically for 1-bedrooms and 2-bedrooms only, and the property you're looking to lease is a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, now we can actually start extracting the data because these are comparable to yours. So after sorting your data into comparables that are actually comparable to yours, the next step is finally extracting the comparable properties and then putting them onto the market analysis sheet I have for you. This is where it gets a little bit more challenging, but the main goal here is to organize your data in a way that makes patterns and trends easy to spot. So the end result looks like this. You'll create a list of comparable listings to your property, arranged from highest performing to lowest revenue-wise. And, like this clean organization just allows you to identify trends, groupings, revenue patterns like that are you just need to see to make accurate predictions. On the other hand, working with the unorganized data on AirDNA just trying to go up and down, scroll up, like you're never going to, it's just much harder to make, a reliable conclusion. So this is the best thing that you can do is just see their annual revenues right in front of you and try to deduce where you lie in it. What's the worst case scenario? What's the best case scenario? What's somewhere mid? Like what is a property that you know, no matter what, that your property logically is just better than theirs. Your unit is better. Your furniture that you could put in there would be better. The layout, it has a corner, like anything, like it is just better. At the beginning, I argue that finding the worst case scenario is actually the best, for you because you have a floor now. And when you have a floor, at least you can make decisions, right? As you do this a couple times, you're gonna get pretty accurate, to be honest with you, on where you think this property will land. You'll get pretty accurate. I can't stress it, guys. The best thing that you can do is just provide yourself clarity because this clarity will allow you to make decisions. The guesswork's out, right? Like, look how much easier the data sheet I was just showing you is to see what's in front of you compared to this, right? Trying to make some sense of this. It's not the same. So now we actually have to extract the comparables and put them on the market analysis resource that's at the bottom of the video. So, like I said, guys, this is tedious, but you need to do it. You need to do it. So this is what it's going to look like. This is what I still do. Nothing's changed. So the first thing you want to do is try and find your ground level. So for example, you already know your property probably isn't going to compare to this one. It's like a corner penthouse kind of thing. That's definitely not for you. And what you want to do is scroll down, sort by revenue, scroll down and find a ground level where you just think that your property is better than, and you can logically understand why. So I'm going to click on this one. Let's go look at the pictures. So your property is probably better than this one. And it's not like, look, looks like someone's mom's attic with a few photos. So your listing is probably better than this one, right? And this one is revenue potential. Yeah, it's doing about 32,000. So this is what I mean by using logic. Like, you could probably understand that your property is better than this. The amenities are better. Not 100% sure about the location, but like the photos you can make better. The building itself is better. The bathroom's better. Everything's better. Here's a full-time host. We're gonna check the reviews, but I mean, I don't have any doubts that this individual has reviews every month, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, October, September. Yeah, so this is a full-time host. So this is actually a great piece of data. With that, we're just gonna take this, add it to our market analysis, right? Link, and just go through punching all this stuff in exactly as AirDNA has it right here, and the host name. So that's your ground level. And now what I want you to do is write a reasoning for your logic behind this property. It can be anything. Just explain the process of why you added that comp. Ground level. My amenities are better. Building better. etc. You can do whatever you think is your reasoning, right? Unknown about location. etc. So maybe that property does have a very certain location or something that makes it stand out, regardless of how it looks on Airbnb. But it's probably not the case. Um, so yeah, you're at the very least you're better than this property, and you're gonna just do it again and again and again, and you're gonna keep going up this revenue potential because you might find something else a bit higher up, and you're like, I'm actually better than this one too, or at least I think I am, and then that's kind of your ground level, and then you're gonna go up. Anything that looks similar to yours, you're gonna add it to this sheet, like somewhere on par, right? And then think why, of course. Then make sure you put it in the reasoning because it's going to help you a lot at the end when you're trying to create that best mid worst on why you chose this property as the comp. Now, I would recommend not doing anything lower than honestly 8 comparables, and you can go as high as you want. I've seen 25 if you're really trying to go all out in a big market, right? And then when you've weeded through them all, and you start getting up here where like they're all better than yours, that's kind of your ceiling, right? And that's very accurate on where you'll land. Like, if you scroll up and just look through listings, you'll get to a point where like they're all better than yours once you get high enough. Unless you have like this crazy unusual property, then you're right up here at the top. But for the most part, and just keep opening them, checking them out, making sure that there's a review each month, making sure there's enough reviews here, making sure the days available is above 250. And yeah, guys, just go through this process, in the most logical, the only word I can use here is logical. Like, just use the data in front of you. Why do you think that this listing is comparable to yours? And just walk yourself through that. Why do you think this one's better than yours? Why do you think you're better than that one? If you do this, because this is real data, these are real places in the city. And this is how you win in arbitrage, guys. You're not relying on a rental calculator or any random projections of revenue. You're relying on concrete data and you're just trying to apply that Burger King logic. Why is this one working? Why is this one lower? Why is this one higher? Mine's just like this one. I'm going to set up next door. I'm going to set up across the road. Mine's just down the road. Why can't I do this? I have the same amenities. I have the same everything. It's making, 42K a year. That's perfect. If I'm wrong and I make 38, cool. If I'm wrong again and I don't know the city well, maybe mine was closer to a big attraction that like goes above the data that you see here. You would never know unless you live there, and maybe you end up doing 50 something. I'm just saying that that's why you create the best and worst case scenario, because there's kind of outliers and stuff that you just wouldn't think of unless you know the market very well. But that's all it is, guys. So when it's complete, it takes a bit. You get all the links, you get all the data, the days available, everything, all the hosts. See if you can find some repeating hosts. Maybe they might have something that's working in that market, and create a best, mid, and worst based off the data. And when it's complete, it'll look something like this, right? And when you have this right in front of you, it just allows you to make a decision. I know I keep repeating that, but that's the point I'm trying to get across. After you've done that and you have your full revenue spreadsheet right in front of you, the reasonings for each, you'll have a decent idea of revenue projections. But now we're just going to take it one step further. So let's say after really digging in, you've spent, a couple hours, you've decided that, maybe it's unrealistic that you're going to get 154, 155, you've learned more about them, and you're kind of left with this. I know these numbers look similar to the best in mid revenue confidence, but it's not like we're just getting a median of these numbers. Like, that's not how it works. We're not doing calculations, guys. What we want to do now is figure out which like where do we lean on more. Now, I know there is a lot here, but usually in these there's going to only be like pockets, like only like 4 or 5 will be very close in revenue, and then these might drop off too much, and then these might be way too high. So you're only really doing this with a few properties. This specific one, they were just very close together. Just for the sake of explaining it, let's say there's only 5 that you have decided are the final ones that didn't get eliminated. Now, like I said, we're not just doing a median here and, getting like the average of these numbers. We're trying to decide which one we're closer to and the reasoning why. Right now, I want you to dig in even deeper to these ones and just try and figure out as best as you can which one you're closest to. And again, why. For example, maybe the one that's doing 142,000, maybe you think that the only reason it's doing this is because it's a really large house, but maybe the pictures aren't as good, or maybe the pictures are taking at night, and that pictures are performing better than during the day. So although yours is a little bit smaller, maybe the listing itself, the way that you set it up, might close the gap a bit, right? Because you think you are a better host, you can do better photos, you can set things up, you can set lights around, like you can make the listing itself close that gap a little bit in the actual house, like because since their house is just bigger or better in a certain way. So you think that one is only getting that revenue because of its luxury size, and then you come down here, and this one's actually a really good property, but the photos aren't done well. This one is comparable to yours, the actual house itself, but the photos aren't done well. The listing isn't done well. Maybe it's just your expertise. There's some things that you could do better than them. So although the house and the property itself is similar to this 138,000, you know that the way you can portray it on Airbnb should create more revenue than that one, even though it's the same. So you see how you kind of like work through this thought process, and you can kind of eventually start bringing yourself down when you understand why they're making that revenue. Does that make sense, guys? It's just emptying, a couple hours and just looking at the data in front of you and just trying to understand why. Now, one thing I want to talk about is the best case here is not like this hypothetical, like if I hit a home run, this is what I'm gonna hit. The best case scenario is, if the way I'm planning to set this up comes to fruition and it actually looks like that, if the photos that I'm thinking I can take get taken like that, if the way I want to design it ends up being designed like that, the best case is should be what you think it can compare to if everything that you have in your head for your property goes to plan. Like you have this immaculate idea of, like, the balcony with lights across it because you're going to buy lights for it, and you just have like this plan for the listing in your head, and you think the best case scenario is if what's in my head actually gets executed and there's no random roadblocks that are unexpected, and the listing just comes out like you're planning, then it should generate this much and be able to compete with this property. But if, say, it doesn't work out as planned and maybe the photos don't turn out as good, or whatever, you're going to pull it back a bit and say, okay, well, if it doesn't work out good, I think maybe it'll be more comparable to this one. It's still going to make me profit, but what I had in my head for this property just didn't end up being true in real life. So this is not a best case, mid worst case calculation of you're not trying to find the median, right? You're still trying to deduce where you actually sit here. And then the worst case is like if my plan goes to shambles, and it's just not, this doesn't work out the way I wanted it to. The listing, the firm, like it just didn't come to life like I thought it would. At the very least, I know I'm very confident I could end up at least here, because the listings that are here on Airbnb full time, they're still generating X amount of revenue, and my home is better than them, and they don't have good photos either. So there's not a chance where I go below this amount of revenue. And I know that was a lot, guys, but this is how the big STR investment firms do it. This is how the large arbitragers do it. This is how I do it. And the better that you can get at this skill of market analysis, the more accurate you'll be and the more confidence you'll have in taking deals. After you've done this and you've came to a best case, a mid, and a worst case, the final step you want to do is take it and move it over to the ROI calculator so you can see how this will actually pan out. Now, of course, this is hypothetical to a degree because month one could be high season. We could be going through low season at the beginning. So how fast the cash comes back to you, depends on seasonality and a couple other factors. But it still gives you a good idea. So what you're going to do, I'm going to get myself out of the way here, is you're going to go back, grab the number, worst case, whatever way you want to do this. And you want to divide it by 12 so you have the revenue by the month, right? And of course, like I said, some months should be really high, but some months are going to be lower, high season, low season. But regardless, when it averages out, it's still going to be somewhere around here. We're going to take that division and we're going to put it into the calculator so we can see the projections. Now, that example was literally an example. So I'm going to run you through a different property, the one that I used way earlier in this course. So the startup costs were $16,000. The estimated revenue projections were $6,500. The rent per month was $3,339. Utilities were about $300, something like that. Rent concessions, we got 2 months free, and the lease length is 24 months. So what this actually does for you is it shows you the break-even time on the cash you initially spent. Now, guys, this setup cost is everything. Furniture, interior designing, photography, everything. Furniture setup, everything goes into this setup cost. And what it will give you is the break-even time on how fast that $16,000 comes back in your wallet. Again, this could be faster or slower depending on what time of the year it is, but overall, this is fairly accurate. The first year profit, not revenue, profit, and the first year return on investment of this initial $16,000. And then if you look at the profit over lease, right, 24 months, 2-year lease, this one, it is $75,000, and the ROI across the entire lease is 371%. So of course, this will be, to a degree, hypothetical, but what this does is it gives you not only an idea of what the revenue is going to be or the return is going to be, it also gives you what you need to negotiate with the landlord going into the deal. So before you actually sign a lease. So this, of course, looks good, but maybe your deal isn't a complete home run, but it still is decent and maybe worth pursuing. For example, if I have no lease concessions, this is still good, but depending on your unit, maybe it's not worth it for you if there's no lease concessions because you're trying to scale big this year and it's going to take too long for you to get that cash back so you can keep scaling. So although the deal may be okay, you know, because you've done the research, that you are okay to walk away from this deal unless you can get 2 months free if you want to achieve X goal. Just something to consider, guys. But that's how you use this. You put in your setup costs, you put in the revenue that you have deduced from your market analysis, divided by 12, the rent of the property you're considering to lease, utilities, you can round it, and it's going to spit back to you the projections. This is how I do it, guys. As you move this chart will fluctuate, and you can see it. So that's how I do market analysis, guys. So this is what we do from A to Z. This is the market analysis process from the very beginning to the end. You look at the big picture. You start by analyzing market trends to decide which locations, property sizes, or types are worth exploring to begin reaching out to landlords in a specific market. Like we said, market score, market growth, RevPAR, inventory per listing size. After this, you know where to look because you've done some research. You know where is actually worth your time to reach out on Zillow. You use the process in the finding your first property video I have, and you launch out a bunch of outreach, and then eventually you will have some interested property management or landlords that want to learn more about you. Now, before making any deal, although they said yes, you're excited, before making any deal, you have to thoroughly review the property's amenities and features and details and everything. After you've done that, we're going to jump back on AirDNA. We're going to filter out the bad data, like you've now learned how to do, and we're going to narrow it down to just a listing similar to your property. So if you have 2 bedrooms, you're going to look at properties with 1 to 2 bedrooms. If you have 5 bedrooms, 6 bedrooms, you're going to look at other large houses. You're going to use the clear reasoning to pick accurate comparisons and ensure they pass the initial screening. So they must be active for 250 days. They must have 20 plus reviews. It must be a full-time host. And there must be a review every month. You're going to use logic to determine why certain properties are comparable to yours. You're going to gain more clarity and understand where you sit in these comps. After you've done that, you're going to narrow down again and figure out which one of those few you lean the closest to and why you think that. You're going to arrive at the best, mid, and worst case scenario. When you finally completed all that analysis for your potential property, you're then going to run the numbers and use the ROI calculator to estimate your return. This will provide clarity and potentially help you with the negotiations, so you know what's needed to make the deal worth your money. That's it. It's the process I use every single time, and it works. It works well. Let's get to work, guys. You have an advantage. I didn't have these resources when I started. I got burned. So you have these. You already have the advantage. So you're in a good spot. So just like I keep saying, this whole course is just do the actions that I'm just teaching you to do, and you'll be good. You'll succeed. There's no reason to lose money if you do this work.